right, guys, welcome back to the newest episode of the Results Method podcast. And today we are bringing you something a little different. We are going to walk inside a real athlete check-in during prep with the lovely Sarah.
Hi.
So, Sarah, tell us a little bit about, the check-in process, where we're at in this stage versus the multi-stage protocol that we've got for you. Tell everyone at home.
Yeah,
Timelines.
100%. So we are 5 weeks out from the FMG Gold Coast show, and it must be 9 weeks out from FMG Italy. Yeah. Italy was obviously the original plan, and then we threw in Gold Coast as well. So we are, must be 15 we'ks into prep now.
We are.
And it is our sixth prep together. So we know each other very well.
Very well.
But we've started pretty intense with prep. And then we've kind of started pulling things back now as well. So I'm sure we'll get into the details of that.
Yep, correct. And I think it's actually been the right strategy when we look at this prep and this point in prep to previous preps. And every single prep, I think you're right. I get to learn more about you. You learn a lot more about yourself and the process as well. But we are identifying, fine-tuning and refining everything we do every single season. And with every inch of extra muscle we build, the process gets easier and more beautiful from a strategy point of view. And I love it. And I just love seeing those, drastic changes, because even though, you're a long-limbed, hard-gaining, natural athlete, when we talk about extreme visible changes, for that context, I feel like we are. But, compared to others in the industry not playing the same game, it's not as extreme. Yeah. But I'm really proud of what we're doing. So we wanted to share this with you today because we just wanted to kind of walk you through how I assess a level of progress week to week, what Sarah enjoys from our collaborative process together, and to really show that we never focus just on the scale, right? It's always about understanding what's happening physiologically. We look at how Sarah's body's responding. We make all of our decisions from those multifaceted areas, because in this journey, the goal isn't just fat loss, guys. Like, I can't stress this enough to people. Hard dieting and overtraining puts a stringy, horrible looking physique on stage every damn time. So what we're looking to do is step on stage with the best physique possible, make improvements on what we did last time, and make sure that we are maximizing muscle retention. We are optimizing our level of conditioning for the category that we are aiming for, which has evolved, and that we are maintaining high performance all the way through. I don't want Sarah dying in her ass all the way through to stage, and even for periods longer than very short terms, right? So today we just wanted to really walk you through exactly how we break that down and what that looks like. And I know we share a little bit online with our lives, but we thought it might be really cool to put it into a podcast episode. So if you're actually not following myself or Sarah, you're doing yourself a disservice. You really should be, because we're awesome. But outside of that, we do share quite a bit. So Sarah, give them your handle, give them mine, and then we'll jump into the context of today's check-in.
Yeah, so my handle is Sarah_Bikini Pro, and what is yours?
It's at Alicia Kyrgios, I think.
Just no underscores?
No underscores, I don't think. Let me double check on that. This is so funny.
We can edit it.
It's like I never know my own phone number, but I know everyone else's.
We'll link them.
Yeah, it's just Alicia Kyrgios.
Perfect.
No underscore.
Okay.
Great. So we are sharing all the time Sarah's process, and we do that because she's such a great athlete to work with, and we have such a great working relationship. So it's really easy and effortless for us to come together and produce this content for all of you. And so on that note, because it is showcasing the relationship we have and how we operate together. Midweek, Sarah sent me through a text message and was like, and I need to put this context in here because it's important at this point in prep. And she was like, hey, Ali, just letting you know, it's Wednesday morning and I've already dropped 800 grams. And I'm like, whoa, okay. For a lot of people, and this is where it's important to state this, for a lot of people at this point in prep, they would be like punching the sky, thinking it's a big win, loving on life. But for us, this is actually a bit of a red flag. And I'll let Sarah go into why she, reached out to me and also why this is a red flag? Because it was for us.
Yeah, so we talked about it in our check-in the previous Sunday, and Ali said our rate of predicted loss, or what we're aiming for, was around 300 to 500 grams.
Yeah.
So when we got to Wednesday, which is only 3-4 days later, I was like, we've already dropped almost double that. So instantly I was messaging Ali because I didn't know whether it was good or bad or if we needed to change anything, but I know, like, getting this close to this stage, we want to obviously refine things as much as we can. So I just messaged her straight away.
Yep. And that's, I think, exactly how it should be. You want your athlete to be super responsive, dialed into the process, understand what you're looking for, really tuned into how they are responding. And then just open lines of comms always, right? So for me, it was an immediate, holy crap, okay, we need to make some adjustments. And within, 10 minutes, I had recalculated, recalibrated, and made those adjustments. And so what we did was we dropped her swim session. We went from 4 to 3, capped it at the 3. So output was reduced. I immediately increased her average daily kcal intake across the entire week. So her baseline calories came up slightly. Then we optimized, which she was very happy about, her 2 biggest training days. So the 2 highest output days that, require a lot more from her, where I want to maintain performance. We wanted to be quite intentional about keeping the strength and the performance and recoverability high there. We've put higher carbohydrate intake in on those 2 days. So we then let the rest of the week play out to look at today's check-in, to look at it as a holistic viewpoint, and then assess to see, how that actually worked and what else we need to do. So, and she did love the higher carb days.
I did. And I have to say as well, it really helped with training this week. Good. Like, I actually managed to increase a couple of those bigger lifts on those training days where I've got the higher carbs. So definitely felt that extra energy to push like an extra couple of reps out or increase that weight slightly, which was so good.
And this is important. These are the things that people wouldn't normally immediately assume are important, but they really are. So when we're looking at our, analysis, and when I'm, pulling up a check-in and I'm looking at Sarah's stuff, the first thing I always look at is data. We don't get emotional over anything that we're seeing. We go straight to the visuals, and we recapped on this today. Super impressive level of change between last week and this week. And there were some really good markers that showed me, though, that we're holding on to the muscle, which is great. However, if I had not have made those adjustments, that might not have been the case in the next 2 weeks. So when I'm looking at it, I go straight to my visuals first, and we saw a little bit more sharpness through the glute tie-in. We're starting to see more sharpness through those hamstring splits. We're getting a lot more detail even in the upper body, but the upper body is staying really stable, as are all of her limbs, which is great. So waist came in. We could see more visible conditioning coming through serratus and obliques through that baseline midsection, which is great considering she's actually in ovulation. We also saw that overall weight had come down by 1%, which was higher than what I wanted. So with this, change this week, I think we're going to see that slow down a little bit, which is important. So we had weight down, we had waist and hips down, we had limbs that were stable, we had steps slightly down but within range because we did want that reduction in output, and everything else was aligned with the target adjustments that we made. So when I'm looking at the visuals and I'm like, cool, everything looks crisper, sharper, but still full, and we're not looking stringy, flat, and depleted, then I'm also looking at it and going, cool, we've got stabilization in limbs, but we've got waist going down, hips going down, and never, ever question her adherence. It's always so freaking high. Then that tells me that even with less output, even with more food, we were still seeing fat loss. Now, that's a really strong signal that the previous setup, as I said, had we have kept going, would have been too aggressive. Within the next week or two, we would have seen a stringy, flat, depleted, not fantastic physique that we want. So the adjustment at the moment is improving the quality of our deficit, right, which will improve the performance in the gym, the recovery markers, but also our finish on stage. What we're chasing here is efficient fat loss, not excessive fat loss at the detriment of the shape that we want to present, right?
Yeah.
You feeling that yourself?
Yeah, I feel like almost daily, like since we've made those increases, I'm feeling better, but also like looking better each
Yeah.
day, like looking a little bit fuller, a little bit tighter,
Sharper.
Yeah, there's kind of like new lines coming through. I can definitely notice when I'm doing my posing that we're looking better with that food increase, which just almost feels so backwards.
That's what I was
Me
just
would have
going
been
to
so
say.
scared.
I was just going to say, I was going to go, Sarah, this, for a lot of people listening to this, would be a freak out moment. They would be like, what the actual fudge is my coach doing? Is she smoking crack, right? They would be thinking that because it is like the flip on the head of I've got to get smaller, I've got to shrink, I've got to get lighter, I've got to eat less, I've got to do more, it's got to feel hard, I've got to die. That's what people think. And I think what we've done in consecutive seasons, as we keep bringing your consecutively best physiques to stage, and we're not even tapping the surface yet on where we're going to go. I know what we're going to look like 2 to 3 years from now, and it's going to blow your mind. But it's like, if we're doing all of those things and we're getting easier, better, more food, and we're seeing those pullbacks, you're in a place now where you can comfortably go, okay, cool, I'll follow this and I'll execute, and you're feeling it. But initially old you would have freaked out, yeah?
Yeah, I was actually looking at one of my old posts from my last prep, and I was comparing like the protocols from my last prep, which to that date was my best prep yet, and now this one's way better. But like I'm doing half the amount of cardio, eating way more food, and bringing a better physique. So it's like every prep gets easier and better.
Yeah. And I remember saying that to you when we very first got together. I remember saying to you, if you trust me and we get this right, when we continue to build upon the foundations that we set up in the first process, this should feel, you should get to a point where you turn around to me and go, I feel this here for this short time frame, but for the rest of it, I don't know that I really feel like I'm doing enough, and I don't know that I really feel like I'm struggling, and I don't know that I really feel like I'm in prep. We should have lots of moments where you have those discussions with me, and we have had those. And I always take that as a cue that, shit, yeah, we're on the right track, right?
100%. Like first 8 weeks, I was dying most of that, but now I feel great.
The aggressive hole always puts you there. So, okay, so now we go through the visuals, we look at those metrics, and I'm seeing like a much bigger picture, and I'm taking multiple data points, not just scale weight, right? But the scale weight for us this week was actually a red flag. So we adjusted, we moved forward, and then the next layer of what I look at is our recovery and physiology-based markers. So this is where most people will stop too early in their analysis, right? They'll just go weight, or they'll just go photos, and then that's really it. What I'm looking at, and a marker that we've discussed for the last 2 consecutive weeks, is sleep. We wanted to see improvements, which we did, which was great, but there was still a little bit of inconsistencies, and that comes down to inconsistencies in timing. And I'll let Sarah talk to this, because I believe that once she nails a couple of things she's going to focus on from a hygiene perspective, we're going to see this increase again.
Yeah, 100%. So, I mean, I feel like my bad sleeps are still not that bad. It's just been early wake up. So my sleep average has been like 7.5 hours. So usually I'd get like around 7. On a really good night, I might get 8, but it's been like, that's been this week. Last week, it was waking up super, super early, like 2:30, 3 o'clock almost every morning, and just feeling like wide awake, ready to fight a bear, or like ready to go.
And to give people context at home, though, just so they understand Sarah a little bit more and her psychology, and also I would say circadian rhythm physiology, is this crazy woman always gets up at like 4 a.m. So even when she was in NZ, she would be up at stupid o'clock, and I would be like, woman, you can sleep in past this. And she's like, I know I can, but I don't think I can, because my body's like, boom.
Yeah.
So we just see, we see that early period and marker creep a little earlier, and I don't want that. We want that early, her normal early to remain the normal.
Yeah.
Nothing beyond that.
Yeah, 100%. And I've definitely seen an improvement this week. Like I had 1 or 2 mornings where I actually slept in until 4, which was amazing. And I think like those days where I was waking up earlier, we've identified that I was working later and I wasn't winding down properly. So I think, you know, that's going to be a big focus, is just having that proper sleep hygiene and wind down, not pounding away on my laptop right before I try and go to sleep.
Oh, the joys of being a busy business owner, hey? Oh, my Lord. So So sleep was improved. We just had those inconsistencies, which we're going to address. It's a sleep hygiene issue. We'll make those changes. Sarah knows her focus points for the week ahead. We had a lower resting heart rate, which again does not concern me, and I'll give context to this in a minute. We also saw mood recovery and motivation super high, so like 4 out of 5 on all of the spectrums, which is great. Hunger is only moderate, and digestion had a slight downward trend. So what I'm seeing here, when I think about this in context and we put it all together, it shows us that she's just basically becoming super efficient now in the deficit. So what I mean by that, and when I was saying this to Sarah, she was like, that's super interesting. And I'm like, well, this is how and why it happens, because over time in a prep process, and for anyone, even Gen Pop, that's in a chronic or a prolonged period of dieting, the body is going to adapt to your lower energy intake, right? And it's going to adapt because it's going to reduce your energy expenditure overall. It is going to become far more efficient at using fuel, and it is going to try its best to maintain a homeostasis level despite your deficit. So it's going to reduce NEAT. You won't blink as much. You won't, those subconscious movements won't happen as much. Like there's a whole myriad of things that kick on, right? So how do we actually identify that? Well, the ways that I do, and some of the few key signals that I notice, is that there will be a very low resting heart rate. So strong adaptation signal. It's a reduced systemic output by the body. And that's linked to your NEAT. There'll be stable performance even with less input, meaning the body is doing more with less. And we've seen that consecutively over the last few weeks with Sarah. So even though she had that big drop, she wasn't reporting inner ass levels of performance or anything, right? Fat loss is still continuing despite our reduced output. And also, it's a sign that we've got efficiencies in her systems are really high at the moment. She is maintaining that same level of intensity in the gym, but the recoverability will suffer. So hunger is also not excessively high. She's rated that as moderate, which tells me the body has now adapted to that deficit level. So even though we're still in a deficit, she's no longer stressed in the same way in that deficit as she was earlier on. So when she talks about, wanting to slit my throat in the first 8 weeks, she's back to loving me and giving me hugs now. And yet she's, further along in the deficit. So the really important factor is understanding that once the body becomes highly efficient and we're seeing these markers, the biggest mistake people make is they continue to push harder. That is the biggest mistake I see constantly. The amount of, athletes I see get to stage and they just look stringy, and they might be conditioned, but they are just, I don't even know how to explain it, but depleted, stringy, small. They're all words that come to mind because pushing harder in a period like this is never going to equal better results on stage. You might even have seen some of this backstage yourself.
Yeah, you definitely know, like when you see someone. Yeah.
And even, people that reach out to you and they're talking to you about their own preps, and you look at what they're on and what they're doing and you're like,
I feel guilty, sharing mine sometimes.
And I know that's why you no longer share your stuff. I don't
share my calories.
I love that because Sarah used to. And then we made a decision when she was talking to me one day about it. And I said to her, babe, you know what? I've never shown mine because people would just get offended.
Yeah,
and it's you don't. And then it's a case of, well, there's something wrong with me because mine doesn't look like that. Remember, it's always individualized. Everyone's position is different. So you should never look like someone else, but people get really upset when they see someone doing way less and eating way more and also not using PEDs to do it. I think, it's a slap in the face for some. So what we actually tend to see happen is you increase output, the body compensates. You increase risk of muscle loss and recovery issues. So if we weren't looking at those markers and making those adjustments, this is the stuff that we would have seen with Sarah 2 weeks later if she hadn't messaged me on that Wednesday and I hadn't pulled her really quickly, right? So we would have ended up with muscle loss, recovery issues, greater sleep issues, and also hormone disruption. And that's not going to give us anything we want for stage. The push harder would never have meaningfully improved her fat loss rate. We just would have been breaking down muscle tissue. So overall, when I see a very low heart rate, improved recovery markers and continued fat loss, even after we pull back output, it tells me that we're in a phase where precision is going to matter way more than pressure, right? So that's why we made the midweek adjustment. It was important. And instead of trying to outwork the adaptation, we slightly increased input and we reduced output to keep the system in a place where we can still lose fat. We're not compromising muscle or recovery in order to do it.
Yeah. And I think that's where it comes down to, like, having that relationship with your coach and having that trust. And I think the fact that you give so much information and so much science behind everything that we're doing really, really helps, because I know kind of like what to expect, but then I also know why we're doing things.
Yeah.
So I'm not just looking at the scale going down or just trying to look at my physique, which like when you're this close to a show, you can't objectively look at your own physique anyway. So I think that really, really helps having that relationship and then understanding why we're doing things as well.
100%. And I think the more consecutive seasons, improvements and wins you have with someone, either, you know, you as an athlete with your coach or your coach with you as an athlete, the easier that trust gets to just hand it over to, and to be like, I'm not even going to question myself, because Ali will tell me if I'm being a retard, or she'll change something if we need to change it, right? I think that's super important. And you're really good at not comparing yourself to others, which I love. What we've really developed in you, and this was the best thing about getting you as a brand new green athlete, never competed before, was that I could build in you all of the things of a pro from day one, well before we even hit the stage, let alone went from amateur to pro, right? And so your outlook on things and the way you approached your process, the way you saw yourself, the way you remove those, you know, barriers that a lot of people have to unlocking their true potential because they get trapped by comparative analysis. You didn't have any of that, and you still don't. And I love it. It's what makes you such an incredible person to work with, but such an incredible athlete. And I always, and have done for the last probably 3.5 years, said to people, go follow Sarah. If you want to know how to do this and how to do this well and not get trapped in your own head, caught up in all of the shit, thinking you need to be an influencer or follow a cliquey group or whatever just to get success, reduce all of that noise, just follow Sarah. She's how you do it right. So that's a testament to you.
Just keep it simple.
Keep it simple. Stay in your own lane. Focus on you, and the only person you compare yourself to is yourself and your previous process, right?
Exactly.
And we've gotten really good at doing that, and I love that. So at this stage, her body is no longer resisting fat loss. We've identified that. It's adapting to survive it now. So when we know that it's not resisting, it's adapting, we have to actually work with that, not against it. And that's what we've been doing this week with our adjustments, but also what we're doing moving forward. So when we zoom out now and we go, because this is where context matters most, we're now moving out of this, you know, more aggressive. We were super aggressive, less aggressive. Now we're coming into a refinement and a controlled phase, right? So earlier on, I know we've explained a couple of times now, we can push harder. There's a greater tolerability for a higher deficit where we're in a higher body fat percentage. So we went hard then. Now that we're in this lower body fat percentage, there is a much higher risk of muscle loss. There is greater importance now on recovery and performance, because the goal is no longer to lose weight fast. We're about looking better, sharper, more conditioned and fuller week to week. So that brings us into the key question, because I know everyone would be wanting to know, why the hell did you make her have higher calories and you reduce her output, yet you're still trying to get a little bit leaner? Have you had anyone ask you that? Like pop into your socials and be like, what the fudge?
Yeah, because I posted a few stories this week of like the extra carbs I've been having and something like that cream of rice meal with the dates and the peanut butter. So good. But I've had people asking that exact question. Like, are you kind of stage conditioned now? Like, why are you doing that?
And we're not yet. We're not yet. We're not where we want to be. We're still peaking. Our best will be Italy, but we're bringing something special still to GC. We made that decision when we looked at where we sat, where her markers were, and we assessed health risks against the ability to make the timeline with a physique that was still super competitive about 5-6 weeks ago, right? So again, we wouldn't have made that decision to throw this one in if it wasn't feasible, both, physically and, logistically, but it was. So when we did that, if it had have driven her down in any way, we wouldn't have moved ahead. And I think that it's a really cool way to address the questions that come through to you, to be like, okay, well, as the body fat drops, your tolerance to a deficit decreases. And so what the body will do, even if the body stays on the same calories, the stress on the body increases. So energy availability will continue to be blunted. Now, energy availability and making sure, and we've talked about this a lot in our check-in process, is that we went lowest at that aggressive point when body fat levels were highest, and it has the least amount of disruption on all of your physiological functions, right? So that point in time, it was okay. At no point past that do we want to compromise our EA at a level that then down regulates everything and we have a negative health response, right? So in order to keep the EA where we want it to be, yes, we've decreased the output a fraction, but we've increased food to keep you in a range where your body can still perform with intensity and recover, and we don't have those hormone disruptions that will come as a result of continuously driving things down, right? So if you can think about it, can increase performance and intensity, and we maintain those recoverability markers, what are we going to do? We're going to maintain our mass. What is our mass? Our mass is our most metabolically expensive tissue, right? All the literature shows that the larger the deficit, the higher the risk of lean mass loss. So we want to keep that high deficit at the start, and then we want to taper back, because especially in leaner athletes, that's when you see it the most. And you probably would have seen this. And I think even in a couple of instances where we didn't quite have as much of the mass we've got now, where we could run what we're running now, we noticed we lost a little more than what we're losing now. And I think that, that's also evident in the process we've had this time versus previous.
Yeah, it's definitely the best my performance has been through a prep, and my recoverability and all of those markers as well.
Yeah. And look, at this stage, the quickest way to lose a really good stage physique is to lose muscle. So you want to be reducing. It's inevitable in a natural athlete. You're always going to lose a percentage, but we want to try and keep it at the most minimal end of the range possible. So performance will always drive your physique. So what are we looking at? How do we maintain performance? How do we maintain intensity? And how do we keep recoverability as high as we can under the circumstances, while still allowing for fat loss to continue to crisp the physique, but without losing the hard-earned muscle that we've gained? So to answer the question, we are increasing input to be able to ensure that our intensity and performance is maintained, thus maintaining our muscle mass. So we had a strategic caloric distribution this week. We didn't just have higher days that were random, okay? They were really largely placed in around training. You might want to have a bit of a chat to everyone about that and what that's looked like.
Yeah, so we've, on my two biggest leg days, those are the days that we've increased the higher carbs. And then we also had a slight increase across all of the other days as well, which has been pre and post training. So my pre-workout oats and my post-workout oats have both increased. So all of the increases were around training, really, to drive that performance and recovery.
And we only had one other small increase, which was positioned right after dinner and pre-bed.
Yes.
And that had a specific strategic, outcome we were looking for on sleep quality and sleep duration. So
so we added that banana into my Ninja Creamy at night, which tastes so good.
She's always smashing those Ninja Creamies. I love it. She's the reason I got mine. And once I got it and had it, I'd been programming her for 18 months. And then I had my first one and went, oh my God, now I get it. Why did I wait so long to get one? I couldn't understand it. I kept saying to Chris, like, man, she's smoking crack, eh? Like, what is her addiction to Ninja Creamies? They must have something in them. And then when I had one, I was like, okay, no, I take it all back, Sarah. I think I messaged her that day and went, I take it back. I understand it. You're not a crackhead. I get the ninja thing now.
That's so good. I think as well, though, like having those extra carbs at nights helps sleep,
Yeah.
but then it also probably helped a little bit with training in the morning.
100%.
So to train early.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. So what this week has shown us is that even though we've had more food, less output, you're still progressing, fat loss is still happening. It tells us we've likely moved into a more optimal position from here throughout. Now, will we potentially have more increases? Maybe. We're going to wait and see what this next week gives us. And you know the map, you know what I'm expecting. So if we are slightly ahead of that, we may refine. I will look at several markers before I make that decision, and it may not happen in this week. It may happen the week after, but it might be on the cards. So, you know, we sort of understand that. So our coaching focus for this week is it's not about disrupting the momentum that you're already building, right? So we're going to hold the plan that we've made the adjustments already in. We're going to wait and see what the context of the next rate of change is in this coming week, plus all the other variables. What I want to do is keep an eye on this digestion. So as I've said to you, let's keep food consistency and timing on track if we can. We want to try to manage as much variability as possible so we can really assess, you know, what might be happening. I think as sleep continues to improve, we're going to see improvements here as well. And we want to keep an eye on hydration and sodium. And I might even get you to make sure that you're having, you know, water with electrolyte prior to your swims as well, just because, you know, they will be another avenue for you to potentially be dropping a little bit of that hydration status. So I want to focus heavily on that sleep consistency. So those hygiene things we've discussed, some of the key things you're going to make changes in your schedule. At this level, sleep is a physique variable. So we want to maintain a focus on optimizing that as much as possible. But you're a good girl. Whatever we talk about, you always implement. I don't have to stress about it. Posing for you is always like you do it in your sleep. It's so good. I don't have to stress it with you, but I will make a point of talking about it because at any athlete or client's journey at this point, posing is a major focus. So it's a really high return on investment to be so fluid and flawless on that stage. Like, you know, if we use Christina on the weekend as an example, she was in a league of her own just from the performance alone. Do you know what I mean? Like you just couldn't take your eyes off her. Like, and there wasn't, and I know her routine in and out. So I was watching her and I can assure you there wasn't a single thing that she didn't nail. Like it was flawless. I was like, flawless execution by lady. So you're great like that too. And usually, you know, I know your routine as much as I know hers in the back of my head too. And when I watch you on stage, I'm like, mate, not a single trip up every time. It's great. So posing, super important. But this is also where I think what we're showing this week, this was a really good week actually to do this on the podcast, is just how much of a collaborative process it is.
Absolutely.
You know, I think so many athletes out there think that it's just, I get given a plan and I get told just follow the process and trust it. And I'm like, if you hear those, please run. That's the worst advice to ever give someone. It's a red flag. That's like big red flag. You know, it's got to be individually and week to week responsiveness, review, analysis, discussion, collaboration. You know, because without that, I'm coaching textbook and you're a human being, not a robot. And, you know, it doesn't always go textbook. You've got to understand where, and we've had this happen where I know we've had discussions where I'm like, okay, cool. We've got one of three ways we could do this. These are the three ways. Of the three ways, I think, based upon what we're seeing, the most nuanced approach for us would be this. And I think it's going to be the most relevant. How do you feel about that? And we do those discussions where we get, you know, you get to understand the options and then we apply the one that you're also buying into based upon what I'm giving you. But because there's probably always going to be 2 or 3 ways you can approach a scenario. And just because you can do something or just because the research or the science says, you know, this is possible, doesn't mean that's exactly prescriptively how it's going to roll out for each individual.
Yeah.
And we've even seen like, you know, when we think about our peak week context, right? How many different ways have we approached it as your mass changes or as your conditioning level changes? Like it's, it's a variable, right? So
everyone has been so different.
Exactly. So with you, execution is high. I never doubt that. What we're doing now is we are refining your inputs from here to stage. We're going to keep monitoring your responses and those rates of change. We're going to make very small but very precise adjustments from here. And I think, we'll just keep doing what we're doing and keep kicking ass.
It's only 4 weeks until peak week.
I know. That's crazy. Where has this year gone? Like, Christ, I got to start hide the Easter eggs soon for the kids. It blows my mind. Before I know it, it's going to be Christmas. But if anyone at home takes anything from this, I guess what we really wanted to go through today was progress isn't just about the scale. It's really not. And we've sort of discussed this over the years that each year, as much as people think they should be getting smaller on stage, that's not always the case. So you want to always think about the scale like one of the metrics. For us this week, it was a metric that raised a red flag that allowed us to make some changes. But again, it should only be one data point, not the whole data point. So in snapshot this week, we reduced output, we increased food, we have improved recovery, we still saw fat loss. This is what an effective prep looks like, I believe. And our goal is not to get lighter or to shrink. It is simply to step on stage with the best physique possible.
Yes. Cool.
I hope you all enjoyed this episode. If there is anyone that you think could benefit from listening to this or how the process should look, feel, sound, by all means, please share it, subscribe, like, send us DMs and let us know, what you've enjoyed and what you'd like to see more of. And whether or not you might want to see one more live check-in with Sarah, maybe just leading into peak week, we could do that. But again, we will be, guided by how much and what you would all love to see and hear.
Expose some of our peak week protocols.
Awesome. Till next week. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.